So a big thing I would recommend for students is that they consider the order of difficulty in a section. So for example, logical reasoning, you have roughly 25 questions in the section, but they're not all of equal difficulty. They start off easy, they get harder as the section goes on. So you want to get through the easy questions really fast, build up a time bank that you can then apply to the tougher questions later in the section.
I see. If you look at the reading comprehension section of the LSAT, it kind of, a good amount of our audience are international students preparing for the LSAT. And what kind of disadvantages do you find that international students have that they have to overcome when preparing for the LSAT?
A big issue would be the vocabulary, the fact that the passages are really dense. So you have these big, meaty paragraphs, like you're reading a scholarly journal of some kind. And so for someone who's a non-native English speaker, they might want to give themselves a longer prep timeline to get accustomed to the difficult vocabulary on the LSAT. And I'm not saying that anyone should go make a bunch of flashcards for this because the LSAT's not a vocabulary test, but just to get accustomed to reading more difficult, dense text. And for students in that position, I'm actually recommending that if they can, they take the LSAT before the change, because students who are non-native English speakers actually tend to do better on the logic game section because it doesn't have the same perceived ambiguities of language as logical reasoning and reading comp. Of course, if someone is planning on taking the LSAT a year from now, that's not going to help them. In that case, I just say give themselves a longer timeline.
Just a longer timeline, you think, is tends to be what works best?
Well, there are so many previously administered exams that if you can give yourself more time to work through more practice problems and read more of these difficult passages, then you can build those muscles so that whatever you see on test day will be like just another one of those same practice tests, because they recycle the same methods of reasoning, the same reading comp passage structures again and again and again.
And as far as like working with students for LSAT prep, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see a lot of students make?
One big mistake is simply not allowing enough time to prep for the LSAT. A lot of people will try to knock this out in 2 to 3 months, but it typically takes 5 to 6 months to reach your fullest potential on this exam. Not to say you couldn't get a decent score in less time, but when you're considering the relative importance of the LSAT, it's the biggest factor in the law school admissions process. And when you consider that, it weighs more heavily than your entire undergraduate GPA combined. So why would you spend only 2 to 3 months, less than 1 semester, for the exam that weighs more heavily than all, 8 semesters combined? So I recommend don't sell yourself short, put in the time. And I'll give you a quick second tip, which is that a lot of people don't realize they can retake the LSAT. Law schools won't average multiple scores. They only take the highest. And so I recommend everybody retake if they think they could do even a point or two better, even if it's through pure luck alone.
I see. And if you're thinking of retaking the LSAT, is there a recommended length of time you like to advise people consider after taking the first one?
Well, the LSAT's offered 8 times a year. So that's roughly every month or two. So if someone is taking the LSAT, say in April, and then they want to take it again, maybe in June, 2 months later, if they're going to have time to study over those next 2 months, I'd say retake it in June. And that retake prep might be as little as taking a single practice test per week and reviewing it in depth. That might be all they need to do to stay fresh and maybe make some minor refinements.
Okay, I see. And as far as LSAT scores are concerned, what tends to be the average increase people see by retaking the LSAT?
If you look at official LSAC data, I believe it's only a couple of points in general, but that's taking the entire cross-section of all LSAT test takers, including those who maybe didn't use any resources, like they didn't use a course, they didn't use coaching or tutoring of any kind. If we're narrowing our scope to specifically people who are investing in their prep and taking a new prep course, maybe they studied self-study before, now they're taking a course, or they self-studied before, now they're doing private coaching, they could improve far more than that because now they're actually changing the nature of their prep from round 1 to round 2.
Okay. And for those, I know you had an experience of preparing for the LSAT. Initially, you prepared without any assistance. Would you say if you have the option of self-studying, if that's the only option, how much of a point difference could you expect to get by retaking the LSAT multiple times?
If someone is purely self-studying, it depends on still what they're doing though. Are they using a random book like LSAT for Dummies with fake questions? That's not going to do so much for them. If they're using real, actual, official LSAT prep tests and they're reviewing their mistakes in depth, they might be able to do far better. So I would expect that if if they took it on a whim, cold with no studying, and then now they actually study using real official LSAT prep tests and they review in depth, I could see them potentially improving by 10, 20 points or more. It's all just it depends on what you do differently the next time around.
I see. So with your experience coaching students for the LSAT, what would you say, like one big takeaway you would give students who are looking to go to law school? Would you say, like start early preparing for the LSAT or focus on some other areas of your application?
Well, for someone who is a bit earlier in the process, if they're a freshman or a sophomore in college, I'd always recommend you're keeping your GPA high in undergrad. No matter what your major, just keep your GPA high. Focus on that for the earlier part of your college career. Then if you're serious about law school, maybe getting into junior year, senior year, of course, you want to then switch gears and focus a bit more on the LSAT. Maybe take a lighter course load during the semester that you're studying for college so that you can focus more on your LSAT prep. And the extracurriculars in college actually don't really play that much of a role in admissions. And so I wouldn't focus too much on the clubs and activities. Of course, you can still have fun and do those on the side. But for admissions offices, they really focus on the numbers. So keep your GPA high, get your LSAT as high as possible.
Wait, if you're ready to embark on the exciting journey of graduate admissions in the United States, make sure you're fully prepared by downloading our free ebook, The International Student's Guide to Studying in the United States. Inside, you will find a comprehensive roadmap detailing everything you need to know to succeed. So don't miss out. Click the link in the description section below to download your free copy now.